Let's make sure we don't bill before we start anything.
Yes.
You good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
This is a special meeting of the HPB board meeting on September 1st. I'd like to see if there's a motion to start this meeting. Have a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Member Lanahan? Yes. Member Evans?
Yes.
Member Olson?
Yes.
Chair Pollak?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
McBride.
Hold on. We
Oh, is he on?
gotta make sure Bill's on.
Bill?
Oh,
Oh,
okay, hold on.
They just preemptively tell them.
muting Bill.
We're
Or
muting
not
Bill.
on mute, yeah.
I'm just gonna check if this is me. Bill, if this is you, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Here we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yes.
okay,
Okay.
very good. Okay, with that business complete, does anyone need to recuse themselves? No?
No.
Bill McBride, no.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Jeff, do you want to start this out and set the stage for these 4 items that we are going to cover tonight?
Well, I would suggest that the board work their way through the list,
Okay,
discuss them individually, have a motion on them individually,
okay,
see where it takes us. But preliminarily, I want to make sure we have these in the record. So I'd like them incorporated by reference, provided that the board is agreeable, which would mean a motion if you are agreeable. The amended site plan approved by the planning board on August 3rd, 2022. The seeker negative declaration by the Board of Trustees on August 9th, 2012, together with appendix tab 9, which is called visual resources, the R5 code, Board of Trustees Resolution 20 of 2012, the LWRP, the Village of Pittsford Design Guidelines, and the Planning Board Resolution of June 7th, 2022.
I'd like to make a motion that those documents be added to the record at this special meeting.
I second.
Okay. Member McBride?
Yes.
Member Evans?
Yes.
Member Olson?
Yes.
Member Lanahan?
Yes.
Chair Pollak?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you.
Chair, prior to deliberation, I have a question for the
Okay.
attorney for clarification.
Yep.
One of the biggest concerns that we've received via email and in public and just of my own is whether we do or do not have the ability to rule on this. And I would just like you to state for the record, how we're voting on these 4 things and how that's appropriate.
Yeah, the way that the Chapter 121 is written, there is no parenthetical following the second board or agency in subparagraph capital H period 1. So it's not like if the planning board doesn't do their job in the time that this code gives them, then we can, only then can we step in. This is a process that's given to any board that's involved in the project, the approval stream of the project, if you will. So there is no proviso that we can only do this had the planning board not acted in a timely manner. This presumes that they had acted in a timely manner and that they were correct in their inconsistency determination.
Thank you. I just wanted that on the record to start the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. All right, in the deliberations, we have 4 items, A, B, C, D, from the LWRP. A, and I'll just read it out loud, and we can begin our deliberations after that, that no reasonable,
Hey, Jeff, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure the board understands that this is the first step in the approval process.
right,
That the board, this board, will still get to apply all the rules that it has in the C of A review. The rules that it normally does.
right, that's a good point.
So, if there are just a little design concerns or tweaks or whatever, then you're going to have the opportunity to discuss and work on those with the applicant.
Exactly. Okay. All right. A is no reasonable alternatives exist which would not hinder the achievement of the LWRP standards design guidelines. And to open up questions, if you members of the board have questions for the PCP group that's here, we appreciate that. We have gone through this in some detail, discussed it. If you need any further addition from these people, they are here. If not, we can. I think one thing that's important here, Jeff, maybe to review some of the highlights of our findings on this.
We don't have
The R5, and
We don't have any findings.
they're not findings, but our
Well,
reflections.
and then those wouldn't be appropriate until we really know how the board's going to vote.
Okay, all right, we'll do that. Okay, all right. No comment on A?
Well, I have no questions, but I do have comment. I
Good.
don't know if you
I
want to
don't
do
have
that first.
I don't have any questions.
Yep, okay. Questions?
No.
No questions? No questions?
I don't have questions per se, perhaps comments of it, my opinion. That's the commentary.
Oh, you'd like, do you want to?
No, I'm fine.
Okay,
Okay, well, I do have comments, so I'll start.
add that now?
Great. No reasonable alternatives exist which would permit the action to be undertaken. It is very clear to me that we have a negative declaration on the seeker, that we have R5 code that allows for a multifamily build. All of that's going to happen, and I am in support of that. However, when we talk about reasonable, to me, that means the ability to tweak some of the plans to make that fit better with the design guidelines, which as a member of the HPB, that's what I have the most purview over, and that is what I am personally most concerned with. So to be very clear on my stance, yes to multifamily, it fits R5, it fits seeker, all of that is accurate in my opinion, but I do believe that there are some minor changes, some reasonable changes that could be made to make this match our design guidelines and fit within the character of the village. And I feel that that is the appropriate thing to do, because I am very excited about this brownfield development. That is exactly why we have the R5 code. That is exactly why you're here. And I am excited to work with you to make this project go through. That is a shared goal, at least from me and from the majority, in my opinion, of villagers at this point. We want this. This is a great development for our village. That is my opinion. But it needs to fit our design guidelines. And so with some reasonable changes, I believe that it will. That's my comment to the board.
PCP, any comments on that?
I appreciate that very much. Hopefully we can get through this tonight, and I'm happy to work through the minor details with the architecture and the plans as we go through to the C of A process.
Because for me, those are changes that would be reasonable to keep within the size and scale and the design of our village. I feel like very much when you brought in the pictures of other canal side buildings and where the motivation for those things, and I agree with that. But there are some tweaks, in my opinion, that still need to be made. And to me, it would have been more expeditious in order to get this built, having made those changes prior to landing where we are right now. So I do think there are reasonable accommodations to be made. And I will
If I could respond, I think you're right, or you very well may be right. There could be minor tweaks, but that doesn't necessarily mean there are reasonable alternatives. There are reasonable changes that could still be made in the C of A process, but we made every single tweak requested by the planning board with one exception. We didn't move all the buildings to the canal. So in terms of reasonable alternatives of what we could have done to be consistent with the LWRP and the planning board's mind, there aren't any. We can still make changes to the C of A process. But I think there are no reasonable alternatives for the reasons you pointed out, the R5 code and the C of A.
Yeah, I think we were given the impression that the only way we ever meet the LBRP standard for the planning board was by reducing the density, to below what was allowed in the R5 code and what was already approved. That these tweaks that you're talking about are things that really is more of a C of A process. And I'm not sure from their standpoint if we would ever get there, because I think they had maybe bigger issues that they felt like the R5 was not consistent with the LWRP, essentially.
Respectfully, I'm not in any way trying to make a judgment based on what the planning board did or did not do. My purview is, does this follow the R5 code, and does it meet the design guidelines? And I am specifically weighing in on design guidelines. And therefore, to me, a reasonable alternative is to say, make it fall within the design guidelines, in my interpretation of these two things. However, what would not be reasonable, for example, is to say, oh, you're not allowed to build any of these things. These all have to be single family, like to give you, in my opinion, a non-reasonable alternative. So that's my logic, and I thank you. I would like to hear from the other board members to continue the conversation about that.
Yeah, so in other words, what you're saying is that you are committed to evaluating or weighing those things that have to do with design.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And well, let me go back and say that we've been modifying this design for 15 years.
Yes, you have.
And
Yeah.
over the last year and a half, we've worked really closely with Christina,
Yeah.
some of the other board members that have left this board, and Bill McBride, to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
And it didn't just happen from us. It happened with public input and from this board's input.
Good. Yeah.
However, that said, happy to listen to your comments specifically on the architecture, and if we can make adjustments, I'd be willing to work with you on that.
Okay.
I could speak to a couple of specific things that I think a lot of the work that we did together came to, I think, something that was successful, but it did incorporate some things that maybe not everybody from your side would agree. We said in that letter from November, I believe, last year, no 4 stories, and there was a volumetric measure that is possibly not adhered to. I think those are things that would be revisited in the C of A process. And if this determination tonight would not negate our ability to look at those things and tweak them.
Yeah, I think,
So-
if we got to the final meeting with you, I think we understood that we weren't 100% resolved with the issues that you had, but it seemed like it was time to go on to the PBZA to address the LWRP before we went any further. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because we were close enough that, okay, let's go to the other board, get through that process, then come back to you and, adjust the things that still need to be adjusted, which maybe that's where we'll end up again.
Okay.
I mean, getting the LWRP seems to be a very first step prior
Well,
to the site plan,
yeah,
prior to us.
right.
Some of the things seem a little wonky right now anyway, so yes, agree with that.
Okay. Any other comments from the board on A? Okay. I'd like to go on to B. The action will
Are we
minimize,
doing them one at a time? Did I misunderstand?
sorry?
Should we vote individually and then move on to the next one?
I would think, it's your call. I would suggest an individual vote on 4 factors, each of the 4 factors.
Okay.
Whether you do that is up to you.
Yeah, we can do that.
Now,
Okay,
Check off.
we can do that. I make a motion to accept B, or I'm sorry, A, in the,
You make a motion,
Review.
no, I think, can you read that? I just want to be
My
clear, so I know how I'm
suggestion-
voting. You would say I make a motion that no reasonable alternatives, like,
I suggest that if you're moving, that the motion ought to encapsulate the exact words of A, so there's no confusion for the other board members or the public about what you're voting on.
see if I can find A here. I think I've got A. No. All right. A states, no reasonable alternatives exist which would permit the action to be undertaken in a manner which would not substantially hinder the achievement of such LWRP policy standards and conditions and design guidelines. I just given, when we started this, I gave a sort of an abbreviated version of that, but this is A complete.
And your motion, just for clarity, your motion is that is a correct statement regarding this project.
Okay,
Is that your motion?
yeah, that's the motion. We have a second for that motion.
Yes.
Okay, second?
Member McBride?
Yes.
Member Evans?
no.
Member Olson?
No.
Member Lanahan?
Yes.
Chair Pollak?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Now we can go on to B, which I'll read
Go
off the
ahead,
sheet.
yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll give you the complete verbiage here. The action would be undertaken in a manner which would minimize all adverse effects on such LWRP policy, standards, and conditions and design guidelines. So that is open for discussion here. Any comment from the board? Okay,
No.
hearing no discussion. We can undertake a motion to accept B. Okay. And again, I'll read that again. The action would be undertaken in a manner which will minimize all adverse effects on such LWRP policy standards and conditions and design guidelines. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Member McBride?
I vote yes.
Member Evans?
Yes.
Member Olson?
No.
Member Lanahan?
Yes.
Chair Pollak?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Then there is C. Oh, C, the action will advance one or more of the other LWRP policy standards and conditions and design guidelines. Discussions on C. The planning board really found that they advanced the subparagraphs 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 13.
Thank
Is
you
there
for
discussion
saying
on
that
that? Yeah.
for public,
Yeah.
because I concur, the planning board, yeah, it's already been found.
Any discussion on C?
No.
No? Okay.
So I'll make a motion that the action will advance one or more of the other LWRP policy standards and conditions and design guidelines.
Thank you. I second that motion.
Okay, Member McBride?
Yes.
Member Evans?
Yes.
Member Olson?
Yes.
Member Lanahan?
Yes.
Chair Pollak?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. And D reads, the action will result in an overriding village, regional, or statewide public benefit. Okay. Discussion on that issue.
It does. They cleaned up a brownfield. They're giving us multifamily housing.
Right.
It is a public good.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No.
No? Dan? No?
I would just say that what you guys did with the brownfield was amazing, and there is a need for multifamily use in the village. And there is some accuracy to that statement that Kendra made, but as far as public benefit, I hope there's a way that we could really hash out everything that we talked about in the previous meeting, about the canal walk, about the actual public space, about you guys maintaining the property, even having the boardwalk be larger. Again, maybe we can talk about that in the C of A. Jeff, is that stuff we can talk about in the C of A?
Given the site plan approval, that's going to be a difficult thing, but if it's somehow related to your jurisdiction of the historic architectural aspects, then probably that we could be discussed.
Okay. All right. One point of business here, if we had a resolution, we talked about that, that's no longer necessary with it.
No, I prepared both, the determination has to be in writing, so I prepared a resolution both ways, and we have, I don't know how you're going to vote on this last one, so.
Okay,
we'll
all right.
talk about it after you have that vote.
All right, okay. All right, finally, D. Oh, we went through that. We have no discussion further on D? Okay, we have a motion to accept D.
I'll make a motion that the action will result in an overriding village, regional, or statewide public benefit.
Okay, thank you. We have a second?
Yes.
Okay,
Member McBride?
yes,
Member Evans?
Yes.
Member Olson?
No.
Member Lanahan?
Yes.
Chair Pollak?
yes,
Motion passes.
okay. All right, so back to that point
There's a
again.
proposed resolution that finds, does the findings required by 121.5H1, and which then results in a consistency determination. It would be appropriate to adopt that resolution because it's required to be in writing.
Okay,
I think the clerk has the resolution.
Resolutions.
okay,
I don't know which one it is.
I got it. Okay.
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 Do we all get to read this?
Huh?
Sorry.
I sent it up to you.
Okay.
Matt?
Do we want me to read this aloud?
Yes, if everybody is not sure that they have read it, read it out loud.
I couldn't actually open it, so.
Yeah, I would like it read for the public
Read
before
for
it
the
passed,
public
yeah.
and for the record.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Apparently I've been known for my long reading skills. Okay. Whereas Pittsford Canal Properties, hereinafter PCP, applied to the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pittsford, hereafter Board of Trustees, for special permits for construction of a multifamily residential development and restaurant on their property located at 75 Monroe Ave, Pittsford, New York. And whereas the Board of Trustees entered a secret negative declaration for the development, including Appendix Tab 9 entitled Visual Resources. And whereas the Board of Trustees, following numerous meetings and public hearings, issued to PCP special permits by Resolution 20 of 2012, authorizing construction of a multifamily residential development and a restaurant at the above location, which special permits included a regulating plan for the property. And whereas there have been numerous proceedings and lawsuits regarding the above-mentioned proposed development, and whereas the Board of Trustees reissued the above-mentioned special permits on the second day of July 2019, and whereas PCP made application to the Historic Preservation Board of the Village of Pittsford, hereinafter HPB, for a certificate of appropriateness for the above-mentioned proposed development, and whereas the HPB referred such as application to the Village of Pittsford Planning Board, hereinafter Planning Board, requested a local waterfront revitalization program, hereinafter LWRP review pursuant to Chapter 121 of the Code of the Village of Pittsford, and whereas PCP made application to the Planning Board for final site plan approval for the above-mentioned project, And whereas by resolution dated June 7th, 2022, the planning board found that the proposed development was inconsistent with the LWRP policy standards and conditions set forth in Village Code, section 121-5.g. And whereas PCP made letter of application to the HPB requesting a review of the project pursuant to section 121-5.h.1 of the Code of the Village of Pittsford. And whereas the HPB heard from the applicant and the public and began deliberations regarding the application on August 29, 2022, which meeting was continued on September 1st, 2022. And whereas, having considered PCP's application, public comment, the terms and provisions of the R5 code, the seeker negative declaration, together with Appendix Tab 9 entitled Visual Resources, the 2012 special permits with attached regulating plan issued by the Board of Trustees in 2012, reissued by the Board of Trustees in 2019, the planning board site plan approval issued on August 3rd, 2022, the provisions of the LWRP, the Village of Pittsburgh Design Guidelines, and the planning board's resolution 10 of 2022, dated June 7th, 2022. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Historic Preservation Board of the Village of Pittsburgh that A, no reasonable alternatives exist which would permit the action to be undertaken in a manner which will not substantially hinder the achievement of the LWRP policy standards and conditions and design guidelines. And B, the action will be undertaken in a manner which will minimize all adverse effects on such LWRP policy standards and conditions and design guidelines. And C, the action will advance one or more of the LWRP policy standards and conditions and design guidelines. And D, the action will result in an overriding village, regional, or statewide public benefit. It is further resolved that the foregoing findings constitute a determination that the action, the development proposed and described in PCP's application to the HPB requesting a C of A, and the project created by the amended site plan and approval of the planning board on August 3rd, 2022, is consistent with the LWRP policy standards and conditions and design guidelines.
Okay.
Good job.
Well done.
That was pretty well done.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm not doing it again, so I hope you heard everyone.
Okay. Now we make a motion to accept that,
Resolution.
okay, resolution. I make that motion to accept it.
Second. Okay. Member McBride?
yes,
Member Lanahan?
Yes.
Member Evans?
No.
Member Olson?
No.
Chairperson Pollock?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much for your reading.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Okay.
4 hours every day at 2.
Why don't you have Jeff sign it?
Oh, let me get that one.
Please sign after that.
Yeah.
Be very careful.
Yeah.
One.
You know what? We'll live with my M and my S. Too many.
There you go.
I very much look forward to the C of A process now that we know that that's where it's going. And I care very much that it matches the design guidelines. As I've said the entire time, that is what I am most concerned with. And so whenever that gets scheduled to come back, you will hear more of the same from me, that it really needs to match the guidelines. So that's just
Can we
gonna
schedule
put
it?
that out there.
Well, hold on.
Yeah, let's.
Is it my understanding, Dorothea, that that's resolution signed by Jeff is going to be filed in the clerk's office tonight?
Yes.
Since there is no other business, I'd like to call for an adjournment of this special meeting.
I'll second that.
Wait,
Before we adjourn, can I say a few things? First of all, thank you very much for your consideration on this, and thank you for
Okay, Chris.
helping us move forward. Number one, if possible, before we leave, we could put a date on the calendar, because it's the hardest thing when everyone leaves for folks to try and get a date, so we can have a good conversation about this, number one. Number two, if you have a few minutes now that we're here, and I have my architect here, I'd be happy to hear your comments, so that when we come back, maybe we can progress and not just start from scratch. You obviously have a few reservations you want to talk about the architecture. If you have a few minutes, I would really appreciate you to hear your thoughts from especially you two and Christine, the whole board.
Okay.
Is that possible?
I think it's a great idea,
It's up to the board.
but I'm one, so.
So what, we should look at the calendars first?
Sure. Yep. Bill, you still there?
Bill?
Bill?
Yep.
Okay, all right. We're just checking calendars out here.
Third week of September.
Okay.
Second and third.
12?
That
Well-
we have no clerk available.
No, what?
There's nobody from village office.
The whole week?
Yes. Can I help you?
Yeah, worried, Sharon?
So Labor Day is the 5th. Do we want to try to do this before then?
That was it. That was- I think that was it, me.
No, that was it, me.
You have,
Sure.
Eight is nine?
No,
okay, today's
Well,
the
she tried it to
first,
me.
Labor Day is
the 5th.
the
It's not
5th.
email, that was just, that was,
I thought I just had
The
a blanket
7th
laid
is
down.
out,
no, it's because I do believe them following
the
the.
8th is out,
I mean, you can do it without me.
the 9th is a Friday, it's never good.
Yeah,
The 12th through the 16th, I do not have a secretary available for you. So that puts you into the third week.
yeah.
The 19th, you have your regular meeting. I think you have a full docket. I can't speak.
Yeah, what about Tuesday, the 27th?
Nope.
Um,
But aren't we on the week of the 20th? Did we jump ahead a
No,
week?
we're on the week, yeah, the 19th.
Right, so
Yeah,
the 27th is the week after.
Tuesday the 20th, is that I mean, that's the
20th?
week, the night after you
The
guys. have another
20th is
meeting.
going to be unavailable.
I was gonna say the 20th doesn't work for me.
Yeah, not for me. It's the school startup problem here.
21.
21 or 22?
I can't do 21.
And I can do
22.
21, but not 22. I can't be here.
22.
Oh, actually,
Yeah, the 23rd available.
no, I can do the 21st.
21?
You can do it without me, but I won't be there on the 21st.
Oh, I thought you said it was the 22nd you couldn't do.
I can't do, actually can't do either one.
I can't do it on the 22nd, 23rd.
It is.
It's a Friday, and
Does it have, well, sorry.
could we, is it possible to meet at noon?
Yeah,
That's what I was going to ask. Does it have to be at 5?
absolutely not. I mean, not to me, and it doesn't, as long as
Yes.
I would not want us to have.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to have a decision-making meeting during the day.
I was gonna say, my schedule is up in the air throughout the day. I would either be late or rushed to leave. Unless we were weeks in advance, but again,
I don't mind a
do prefer
workshop
after
session if that's what you want to call it during the day, but I don't want
a decision making
What
event.
time does the workday start? Like, could we do a morning meeting?
What's wrong with 5:30?
to try to find a day.
because I'm really, the last 2 weeks of September, I'm completely. It's really tough, but
yeah, again,
Can it be added to?
this doesn't, it'd be fantastic if we get it approved in the next meeting, but I'm sure it's going to take a round of
More likely a workshop.
showing, so it's really going to be a workshop meeting. So again, if it's noon on the 21st, if Dan comes late or whatever, at least we can proceed.
I could come late on the 22nd, the afternoon.
And just for my own Just educate me. We can't do it during our regular meeting because we're still going to have two separate
It's just-
boards.
Yeah,
No,
well,
that's not really the issue. I mean, I'm sorry, I jumped in before. Jeff, I interrupted you.
sorry, what?
I interrupted you.
Oh, I'm just saying I could do it late on the 22nd. But I think those, I typically those boards are, the business is really full, for
Especially
September.
this time of year to have. to
Our
really
normal
give this-
HPB meetings?
But why isn't this normal now? They've got a site plan, they've got all of these approvals. This feels like normal business and we should be moving it forward. They got
It's up to the
things.
board. It's totally a board call.
Yeah,
So I would suggest that it gets added to the meeting that's already scheduled. That would,
I mean, what if someone gets put behind them? It'll have to be the last one. It'd be unfair for someone to get assigned there.
We should
and-
really go first, but.
Yeah.
all right, well,
That would be very unruly by doing it after the regular meeting.
we'll do it after the regular.
So that's on the 19th,
Yes, yeah.
so we'll be on the schedule.
Wait, what did Bill
I
just
thought-
say? Bill just said it'd be,
You just said it'd be unruly if we put them.
If we put them first.
Yeah.
oh, okay. That's, I didn't hear if you said it would be.
Don't take anything bad by that.
Well, usually the first in is the first time, but it's
Yeah.
okay, it's okay.
But Bill, you're okay doing it on the same date? I mean, I know he's not even.
What
on
makes
that
you
age
think-
anymore.
what makes you think you're first?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so we're agreed on
getting
the
added in
19th?
last.
Nice.
so-
Okay, fine.
19th,
All right.
I'm going to arrive late for that.
Yeah.
So that-
Because you don't need me for anything except for this. So I'm, not available at regular time, but I will be available a little later, so.
Okay,
Do you mind if we come up and take the plans out? Do you mind if we come up to the table?
Now?
Oh, sorry. I thought we said we were going to do that. Did I misunderstand?
yeah, yeah,
I'm just saying, Craig and I'll come up and,
okay.
thank you for scheduling that.
All right. We set the date. What's what we're going to address? Is there anything else we need to do in this meeting?
My desk.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I think right now it's now information only, so isn't it still the meeting, or did I
I
misunderstood?
think we should close the meeting and do information.
Why?
No. Not close my meeting.
Okay, all right.
The 19th.
5:30.
5:30.
I'd show up close to like 6:30 to 7.
No, you have a boarding seating.
Right, we have a whole forum, we're not closing anything here, yeah.
Okay,
Unless a couple of us get extra.
Correct.
all right.
For Kendra and Dan, and again, maybe, I don't know how long you want to take, we don't want to take all night, but maybe 20 minutes or however long you're willing to stay. Maybe Craig can lay out how he got to where he is, if that helps you.
You already laid that out, so I don't need to hear it
Okay,
again.
so-
Love you, no thanks, no thanks.
Just tell us what you don't like.
Well, here's what I see in your design, is that the overall, I don't know where to start, but like the garages, they're great. Okay, the clubhouse, let me just start with that. The clubhouse is very nice too, and same with buildings, let me see this right here. 3 and 4, because they offer very unique design individuality. But then when it gets to like 6 and 7, and even arguably 1 and 2, they're all too identical, in my opinion. So, I'm not up here arguing because we already went through everything, but what I would like to see is I'm all about the materials, as you could tell, and that's where all my votes were based upon, especially in this town. So to see the materials they were using the other night, I wasn't a fan of them. I wouldn't use them on my house. I wouldn't use them on a historical home. And I know obviously this is a new development, so we can't argue that too far. I think we can definitely argue it, and I will throughout the C of A process.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna say everything has to be wood and, horsehair, lath, and plaster on the inside, okay? I'm not gonna argue that, but I think that the main
Nice
thing
touch
for
there.
me is, the main thing for me is to see more of a variety, like I mentioned, and I didn't mean to just say the garages, but the garages offer a great variety because they look different than the rest of the buildings to the left and the right. as does the clubhouse. The clubhouse adds a great deal of new design work. So, instead of having all of these buildings with multiple different architectural styles throughout, and that's why I also liked 3 and 4, because they were kind of more individualized. That's kind of my biggest reservation, is the design cues throughout, and then as well as the materials. And then the largest issue is the 4th floor, and interrupting the existing view shed.
Okay, I mean, that's fine, that's good to know, so we know what to kind of focus on from your perspective. I would point out on the 4th floor, not to say that it's right or wrong, but the gable roofs on the 3-story buildings will be at least as tall as the 4th floor, because the 4th floor has a flat roof. So by the time you take a 3rd story and you put a gable on it, and the gable is running parallel to the canal, that ridge line is going to be the same height or a little bit more. So it won't, the 4th floor will not reduce the view shed any more than the rest of the development. And we can show you, we've done some additional, studies that I think can show you that it'll be satisfactory. I mean, it's for you to decide, but
Yeah.
I know there were some earlier ones done with prior designs before we were involved. And the buildings have come down since then, so the view sheds have only improved from the studies that were done as part of the secret process.
Just improve it more.
Yeah, okay.
Just improve the view shed more, please. Protect that.
No, I mean,
Well, you know what?
Especially with the different
Obviously, so
design
you
buildings.
talked about view shed earlier in the week. It's a concern for you. We actually studied it, and did you receive the seeker document that I sent you showing the original approval on the view shed? Okay. So do you want to talk about that for a second?
Just for a second. I mean, after the last meeting, what Chris and I did after the last meeting is we drove right up to the high school and took a look, right?
And you sat on the bleachers and.
Well, we didn't sit on the bleachers, but we
We sat in the
Down
parking
there.
lot. From the parking lot.
Smoke. The truth is out. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyone on the school board want to write?
I was like, did Puma come out and get you?
So Craig's team figured out the elevations of our site, the elevations from a few viewpoints, and he's going to show you what the views
And
are.
we have some more work that we can do on this, but it just, in the last couple of days, I guess, since we got together, I can actually, so I can send one down that end. So that's the picture that we took the night of the last meeting. So the first picture is from 2 nights ago, whatever it was, and that's 3 nights ago now. So, that's the view as you stand in the parking lot. And you can see the city, I'm pointing to the city there, obviously. So, that's kind
The
of.
arrow's nice.
Yeah, you won't.
Just in case I didn't.
Well, it might be hard to pick out. So turn the
How do you
page.
get that to hang in the air?
So turn the page and you'll see same view, I took this
This is
yesterday.
from the athletic field.
And then if you move to the athletic field, you can see the city kind of moves over that way, just to kind of track it. And then if you're standing in the tennis courts, the city's now behind the trees, right? So that's all interesting. So then we go to the next page. These are what was in the
Seeker
document with the prior design that we weren't involved with. And you can see the studies that were done, they put some balloons in the air, figured out how high this thing
I
was
was
going
going
to
to
be.
say, what's the technology behind?
They used balloons at that time.
Typically then what they would do is use a balloon, put the balloon up to find the elevation,
Yeah.
and then match the photo to the balloon.
And-
Right? I didn't do that, but they
And
did.
just interrupting for 1 second. And
Yeah.
the other pictures that I sent you earlier this week from the seeker document took pictures in between each and every house on Sutherland Street to see what you could see in the summer and the winter.
I didn't include those, but yeah,
Right, and you couldn't see,
right.
you couldn't see through the office park.
Yeah.
You have those?
Yeah, they were.
Because I would
yeah.
like, but can they
They were
be
in the
shared
person's-
publicly?
They were in the
sure.
person's backyard, is that those ones, or? is-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can they go on the website? I want that too.
So this last one that Dan just turned past, that's where we are versus where the prior design was. So we've already lowered this thing substantially, right? Now, this is not the current design. Well,
I don't know where you're
I
going
wasn't
with that
there.
argument, but we'll argue
Okay.
at that point.
So, but I'm just saying the view shed have improved as a result.
But I'm not
But this is
arguing.
where we are now,
Yeah, I
because we
understand.
both want a
But at-
really great
right,
project
right, I
that
agree.
is award-winning,
At
and
the
it is the
time,
gateway to our
The board
village.
did approve that.
Totally agree.
But
Yeah, so then if you turn the page again, I guess I'm just pointing out, so this is across the canal, and I've just, again, to try and verify.
Yeah.
It's like 45
This
feet
here.
here, okay?
Okay,
So
so
the
that's
building's
where the
30.
distance of this arrow is.
Yeah, it's measuring the height of the flagpole, because if you go back to these earlier shots, oh, no, turn the next page, it may be in there. You can see in this shot, look for the flagpole, it's probably over there somewhere. So that's 45 feet. So the tallest portions of our building, with the gables on top of the third floor, are 45 feet,
Oh,
okay? So that's kind of a benchmark for, this line is not an official line, I'm just drawing a line there saying, okay, at 45 feet, we're gonna be up and down, that'll be our high point.
It was of this design?
No, no.
Red line?
Well, no,
Or the
it's of
current
this
design.
design, although this design is not the current design, this was done,
it's the same heights.
but I think it is the same heights, yeah, this should be the same heights as this, so of this.
this is very good.
So it just gives you a sense of where we are. I mean, I know this is, only a couple days of kind of piecing things together, but between the secret stuff that Chris had done previously and the new design and the additional investigations, we're way below the horizon. I'm not saying you're not going to see it, you're going to see
Yeah, we're
it.
not
But you're not going to see it from the,
Stand down
everywhere.
there.
And you're certainly not going to see it from the backyards of these houses.
And the key is, it doesn't block the sun, and it doesn't block the view of the
Right.
city.
We can have a bigger goal than it doesn't block the sun.
Well-
I just want to rephrase what you're talking about
The
this,
comment
Fred,
the
because
comment
we
from
have the
last
same
week was,
idea.
we're going to block her.
Well,
Her
not
sunset,
above the
that's not
horizon,
the
right?
case.
The horizon is still going to be the tree line. The tree line's still going to be.
And that's what Kendra and I are worried about,
Which is
the tree
important.
line horizon.
Correct, that's exactly the criteria.
It's not only the city, it's the entire
Right.
horizon that I think.
No,
is
understood.
a
Understood.
view, but it's still there. so.
Correct.
Yeah, it will
The
be.
horizon is still there.
So,
Chris, Bill McBride, those units that you took out between 7A and 7B, okay? I mean, roughly how many were they, units, roughly?
well, we kind of reconfigured it in order to get a four-story portion on both sides of the bridge. We did like a little duplex on one side. So we might have taken out 3 and then added 3s. It was sort of like a trade in a way.
And
you know?
I think that's fine.
I mean, I
But
think-
did you ever consider those units that you took out between the 7A and 7B? Did you consider putting some 2-story units on some of the other buildings that make up those units you took out?
You're saying put the volume of that 4th story and put it somewhere else in the project? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes.
I mean, we'd have
If
to,
that's a key for you, then that's something that we can definitely look at.
we'd have to increase the footprint of one of those other buildings, I think, to do that, probably.
Say that again?
We'd have to increase the footprint of one of those other buildings, I think, to do that.
Well, 4 stories is an issue. Remember, we fought long and hard to get rid of 4 stories on this. So it's not a clean issue, adding that 4th floor,
Yeah,
even in some sections. And I wonder, I'm not trying to take those apartments away from you that you took out between 7A and 7B, but is there another place that you could put them?
Yeah, so this is a question. No, I'm not. Is it more important that there's no 4-story than a gap in building 4? Like if we filled back in the gap and still had a significant jog in building 7, would that work?
What do you mean a significant job? I don't know. I don't know.
So right now, there's a separation. There's basically building 7, you could call it 2 buildings connected by a bridge.
right,
That's a 13-foot gap between the two.
right.
Right.
yeah.
So if an important item to you is the 4th story that we're proposing, which is
Yeah.
about 4 units, if we put those back in that gap space to kind of make up those units and possibly disperse them somewhere else,
There's a lot of woods in there.
not having,
Yeah, I'm talking about dispersing them someplace else in a not so intrusive fashion as a 4th floor unit.
So one of the difficulties, we looked at doing mezzanines in some of the other buildings to kind of create a little tower or some interest. But if you don't do a mezzanine or some sort of two-story unit, as soon as you put a unit, like if you put one unit on the 4th floor of one building, you've still got to provide an elevator to that unit, you know what I'm saying? So this consolidates those additional units into one location so you can service them more efficiently. If you put one in each building, it's very difficult to service them or meet
Unless you
the.
made a very cool grain tower looking thing that also goes with the commercial nature of the canal side property.
Is that something you would like?
I want this to, well, I'm speaking for myself and then you can have a turn. I would like this to seem more like a canal side property and less like a complex, I guess, that because that would be more variation, that would be consistent. And I'm speaking only for myself. They can all hate me for saying it, but that would be unique. That would match the flour mill and other things. I'm not personally trying to get you to reduce units. I'm trying to get this to look like my village and to feel like my village. So,
Yeah, and I think the clubhouse gives you a little bit of a unique element. Maybe it's not tall like the grain elevator at Shane Place, but it's something that kind of sticks out as a, kind of more unique form. It's a balance between, how much variety you want to create and how quiet the development wants to be in some respects, because a lot of traditional streetscapes are fairly repetitive and simple. That's kind of the basis of a lot of traditional, especially the kind of traditional designs that are part of more of a commercial district. They weren't like inventing a lot of stuff. They were kind of just saying, okay, we're doing this efficiently and simply, and the scale wants to be broken down.
Yeah, and
We'll work with you.
let me go back and say two things. First, with regard to the view shed, do you all understand that? Is there anything else on the view shed that you would want from us? Or does it make sense to you that we're explaining to you that the height that it is now, even with the 4th story, it doesn't breach that horizon?
And
If
like
those images are accurate, then I'm in agreement with you.
Okay.
As long as it doesn't break the tree line from
Okay,
from
The bleachers.
Sutherland Street, and then if Kendra wants to say the bleachers.
okay.
Yeah, the bleacher, like the top of the bleachers.
I gotta look where the bleachers are.
So that's a,
didn't you go
People are gonna
smoke
be
there?
standing
Isn't that what you always told me? Where were you
People are gonna
smoking?
be
If not on the bleachers. Fellas.
The bleachers,
More of this.
the
Oh,
bleachers.
then could you see from there? There's your
they're
vote.
higher than the parking
If-
lot. but down here
From the
below
school, the bleachers
So I think
block the horizon.
Kendra might be asking about is from.
If you're standing at
the lower
the
part of the
school.
bleachers, can I
Sorry,
still see?
I'm hearing you both at the exact same time. I wasn't sure.
No,
Because I want to hear what you were saying.
I guess I wanted you to clarify, the bleachers, the top of the bleachers, pretty high is like the parking lot, but you're thinking more like if I'm sitting lower in the bleachers, can I still see that horizon, right?
Yes, and the trees and how much is going to be building versus what I see now when I sit for my multi-sports and why it takes so long to get me to a meeting for you, right? Like,
Right.
I spend a lot of time there. I live in the village on purpose. No, my
I do
children
too.
went to Sutherland, right?
Right.
So you want to know what the view shed
So
is
that matters to all of us.
This is
from
a substantial height here.
from the field height,
bleacher, yeah.
primarily, right?
Yeah, it is
Or
higher.
slightly above the
It's-
field height.
yeah.
So this one is from up in the parking lot, but you'd like to know what is it down
Like,
lower?
yeah, I come up the
Yeah.
stairs, I'm above field height. I'm not going to
Yeah,
be on the
I mean,
field.
not
I'm
Right,
above
right.
field height, but I'm not parking
You're not
lot
parking.
high, right? Because as a parent, I do sometimes hide from the weather in the parking lot. But for the most time, I'm on the
Okay.
bleachers.
Yeah.
And that matters to a lot of us.
Well, yeah, and I would say that I can't guarantee that from every single vantage point in the village of Pittsburgh, that this won't block the horizon. There may be a seat
Well,
in
I
those
have-
bleachers.
One point that I.
Okay, so, but the common view from Sutherland Street where the tennis courts are, which is the public view, or the public view from the parking area, and I'm really even going to say, standing at the grade of the track, I'm pretty sure it won't be obstructed. So I'll confirm from that.
We'll take a
from
look.
that
And certainly if you go out there.
I'll go with you for the site visit.
Yeah, we should.
But
Yes.
if we stand there and look at that flagpole, we're gonna know pretty well, how high these buildings are, because the flagpole's not moving. So is that flagpole breaking the line of the
Right,
horizon?
but there is a flagpole breaking the horizon. It's different.
No, I'm
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
I'm saying they'll give us an indication of where these would fall. I'm not saying that you like the flagpole.
It's like a
don't.
figure to scale out there.
I'm just
No,
saying.
no, I get all of, I get figure to scale, I get that, and what I'm saying is one flagpole breaking the horizon.
I know.
Very
Yeah.
different
I'm
than
just-
7 buildings
exactly
or
right.
pieces of
I'm
it.
not
So
disagreeing. I'm
we're
just
on the
saying
same page, let's go for a walk.
Right, that's our balloon. The flagpole is our balloon. It's out there. We can use it as a point of reference. We can use that to determine if we're in good shape or not.
So what else you guys, what else do you guys have for these gentlemen here? This is the golden opportunity.
You know, I have a few other things in this packet, but I won't bore you with most of it because, you know, I think.
It's not boring, that's why we're on this
Well,
board.
let me just give you a review of like the fourth story, and that's just kind of where I'm coming from. And this is
Okay.
from section
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
Citing new construction or building alterations should reflect and reinforce existing setbacks and building line continuity and being compatible with existing mass, bulk, and height ratios. Where possible, the entranceway should be buildings located along street level. Let me get to the part where I wanted to read. Incorporate elements of pre-existing architectural styles and patterns and site details reflective of the surrounding areas as well as existing and historical development patterns. So the fourth floor, and if you go to that image, here, let me just
Yeah.
do this. And it needs to be pedestrian welcoming and pedestrian level. And the fourth story of this New York City, Boston brown front, Chicago brownstone. It's not very welcoming, and that's the real root of mine. If it's not going to block the view shed, and Bill has argued for decade plus on the fourth story, it's more or less, is it welcoming as an image to the entrance of the village? And I know it's far down, we can go down that whole topic, but where I'm coming from, where I was voting tonight, where I see this project and I'm flipping through, and then I get to the final page and it's this 4-story massive building, that's just kind of where we're coming from.
I understand you, and it's well taken.
Yeah.
I would just caution against using the LWRP as law.
I'm just looking at design guidelines.
Right.
And then towards-
How this process worked really was the LWRP was approved as part of the R5 years and years ago, and then things happened, lawsuits happened, and now we are where we are. Lawsuit aside, the key thing that we really have to maintain is that we have to make sure that we're consistent with the special permit. The special permit very specifically came up with its own architecture that was based on canal buildings throughout the canal, throughout New York. And canal buildings are large industrial buildings with a lot of windows, and that is the basis of the architectural style that we have to match. Do you understand that? I'm just saying,
I understand.
that's the key. So we don't have to match the village of Pittsford Main Street. We have to match what's conceived of as historic canal commercial style. And I can circle that in the special permit for you if you want to see it. And not only that, but in the special permit, they said, we want to make sure these guys don't veer off this style. They attached 20 historic buildings along the canal that we took to build the style.
Right.
So that's the style we're looking for.
Right.
And, I mean, go ahead.
So respectfully, yes, I've read all of that. I'm very well prepared for this.
Yeah.
So I do see it and understand
Okay.
all of it. My point to you, what this is kind of a mashup then, is a canal side building with a main street, because it is a monolith. Whereas if you walk down Chain Place, they are separate. There are different styles. It is not something that looks all the same. So I'm not arguing against canal side. I've complimented you, I think, a few times on it being a canal side commercial property, because that's where you're building it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I want it to look like
No, it
that,
belongs to the canal.
but I want it to look like it has always belonged on the canal. That's what I want. So I'm not arguing against industry. This, in my opinion, should look like repurposing an old building that's
That would be
always
great.
been there. So
That would be
that,
great.
again, I want you to hear where I'm coming from. I understand.
Yeah.
You've done repurposing.
Yeah, I mean, we've done it all over the place. I mean,
Right.
And, you know, we're doing a project for the National Women's Hall of Fame in Seneca Falls. It's a 4-story stone building built in like 1854.
I recommend you look at that on the website. It's very good.
On the canal. It was an abandoned building. Now it's their,
Exactly.
Hall of Fame. And it's 4 stories stone on the canal. It's not like these, but it's, oh, that one. There you go. That's it. Yeah. I was going to, diverge, but.
Okay, so going back, I think the view shed we're real close on, if not done.
Four-story
I
doesn't work.
understand your four-story comments. We're gonna look at that very specifically. Christina, I know you're trying to say something. Let me be quiet and let you talk.
Well, I'm listening to what Dan is saying, and it's something that we went through heavily with Maria when she was on the board, and it is about the relationship with like.
The human scale.
The human scale, and we did work on that quite a bit, but it sounds like, Dan would like to see a little bit more of that, or maybe you can look at the way that four-story thing, what it can be humanizing, about that area, because he's not seeing it there. But one of the things that we did look at, and sitting those, originally they didn't even have individual entrances to the buildings. And so that was one of the ways, having these little porches and things, so that there was a vibrancy at that
Scale, at
human
that point.
level, where you're walking, you're a pedestrian, and you feel a connection with these buildings because
Yeah.
there are doors and life. How can you get that over by this, this four-story section is what you're thinking, right?
Correct.
I want to,
The pedestrian feel that it's not intimidating and it's not unwelcoming. It needs to,
Yeah, we agree with that. We may not be there, but we agree with that.
and at the, I don't want to make it difficult, but I've said before, from a design standpoint, I kind of like the punctuation of that fourth story. But, does there need to be a fourth story? Probably not need, but the punctuation was nice. It's like a break to.
Yeah.
That's the balance that these guys are fighting over. You want variation,
right.
but you don't want a fourth story. So you can have variation a lot of different ways, height, width, materials, all other things.
And because the access to that building 7 for fire access and things was a little challenging, you end up with a relatively long building there, and the pressure was to break it up. And so the more times we talk about breaking it up, by the time we got to the point where, okay, let's just break it in two.
Yeah.
Connect it with a bridge so that, it works functionally, then the result of that, which was somewhat encouraged by the planning board, was to, well, why don't we do a fourth floor? That would kind of solve the problem, from their standpoint, not necessarily from yours.
Yeah, I get that. I also, I would be concerned if you're going to take that volume and put it on another place, that then all of a sudden we do have another uniform roof that we worked hard to not have. Not like, that's where I'm like making it difficult here, because I'm like, I'm hearing what they're saying, but I don't know that I necessarily agree with taking the volume and just regularizing another area. So that's your design challenge.
I also think you're underestimating yourself. I think there's a way to do this.
You're talking about building 7?
No, I'm talking about the whole thing.
Okay, so-
We all want this to be an award-winning project,
Yes.
right? We are on the same, we want
We're on
this
the
to
same
be fabulous, and
What other specific comments would,
So my
or requests would you make?
my request is to not, let's say, get rid of a fourth floor only to add a gable that makes it taller. We are clearly dealing with a bunch of variables that are all over the place. If it was going to be 4 stories, I would then argue that it should be even more variation. Again, I'm probably the only one, but it's more of a tower. It's something unique. It should look unique and not super modern. It needs to match the canal and the commercial feel. And what I don't want is a commercial feel of a new build in Atlanta where I used to live. I don't want it to feel like that.
Right.
We can do, and we will do better for our village than that. And I worry that we're still too close to that for me to give it approval, from various materials that could be changed to the variation in the buildings.
Yeah, as much as we worked on this, it was still with the understanding that we were at the schematic level, right? We're trying to solve this problem, big problem, 7 buildings. And now that presumably we're going on to the C of A process, we need to kind of dig in deeper and really get into more details about materials and doorways and, the kind of things that are really going to make a difference at the pedestrian scale or level. So I think those will make a difference if we're at the point now that we don't have to debate larger issues of how much parking there is, or whether there's enough green space, or these other kinds of things, which are, for the most part, probably somewhat settled at this point.
And as we design, also remember that part of the criteria that we're trying to follow is that this is a quarter-mile long site. It's long and narrow. And so the buildings kind of take a shape of a rectangle because we're trying to get parking underneath the building. So to make this structure, there's a podium structure, which is what it's called, or something like that. You know, there's parking two ways, so there's a 65-foot structure, and you base that because the original idea was we don't want parking all over the site. We don't want it to be suburban, one of those apartment complexes.
Yeah.
So that's how these buildings kind of came that way. Now, how much variation can you do with a rectangular shaped building?
Right.
Yeah, and I think, sites like the library site or even Shane Place, there's a lot of parking on those sites, if
It's
someone.
hideous. I wouldn't have approved that. So
Right.
again,
No,
I
exactly.
agree with
No,
underneath.
so,
I agree with you.
If you were looking at the LWRP from the standpoint of those sites, you'd be like, well, the benefits probably outweigh the negatives, right? We have a library, you have access to the Main Street, people can park and get to a restaurant at Shane Place. These are all good things. If parking doesn't meet the standard, at least we've got amenities that function for the village. Maybe there's another way to solve that problem, but I think here, putting the parking underneath gives us a real advantage.
How many units how many vehicles go under? No, but under each building or roughly?
Well, it varies.
It's
but-
more than one per unit.
Yeah, I think we're like at about 160 cars total under the building.
That's a lot of parking spots taken off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the big reasons it's not going to look like your typical apartment.
That's right. No,
Yeah.
it's a
Typical
huge reason.
modern apartment complex.
But that combined with the number of entrances we have both on the railroad side and on the canal side, because we're going to have, many apartment complexes have one per building or something like that, which is, not going to be ever the standard here.
Yeah. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen?
I'll tell one quick story, just hopefully give you a little more confidence. So we did this Eastman Theater project back in 2010 or something, which maybe you're familiar with. And before we started, everyone loved the Eastman Theater. It was like, the nicest interior or one of the nicest interiors in Rochester, but it had some real functional problems. It had some acoustical issues. It had, all kinds of accessibility issues. But they understood that they had to do something. When we started ripping this thing apart, the dean of the school walked in and was like, oh my gosh, we just made a huge mistake. I'm going to get fired because we just ruined Rochester's living room or whatever. But, then, we're all done and it's a totally different space, both, here and everything. And I think, you got to just have confidence that we can get there if we really put our minds to it. I know everyone thinks the village is sacred and we shouldn't touch it, but it can get
Not
better.
everyone thinks that. I don't.
Okay.
I don't think that. This is going to be gorgeous. It's not there yet.
That's the attitude you gotta take, right, yeah. Because if people would take the attitude that it's gonna be not a benefit, it's a totally wrong approach.
Well, because we did that vote.
No, I appreciate that.
We're on the
Yeah,
design
yeah.
guidelines,
No, no.
and this
Just-
is going to be gorgeous, and this isn't gorgeous yet, and that's.
No, I'm glad you brought that up.
So
Glad you did that.
any other specific, concrete things that you want us to understand?
Sure, add, yeah.
I want people scale. I want it to be less like the downtown new apartments. I get that we want balconies. I get that that's an
Right.
amenity that we want.
Yeah.
There has to be a way to incorporate this that looks less like that downtown building.
Understood.
And I don't know what that is because I'm not you. That's your expertise. Could you make that happen for me, please? Because I want this to be award-winning and amazing.
Yeah, we could try and do that.
Okay, yes, I want people out, I want people on these things, I want them to not look like they were just put up downtown.
Yeah, you did it on the Eastman Theater, that's for sure. I've gone all up and down that new building, and it's a wonderful blending of the two. It really works. You have a sense of direction in there, you know where things are, and it works really well.
Thank you.
So we want to work the magic here.
Well, that's what we want to do too.
We are on the same team, like, I guess
No, I
that's
agree.
the, like,
I feel
we're-
good about that. Right?
okay.
All right.
Yeah, Christina?
Oh, I have not looked into all of your detailing that you've done thus far, because I assume this would happen later. I
Okay.
just wanted to
Yeah.
verify with.
I wouldn't want you to critique our detailing yet, because
Okay, I get it.
we're not there yet, so.
But specifically with the amenities for the public, I would want this to look like a place that I want to walk. Or, I mean, I'm not going to bring my canoe down there, but, you know,
I
I
am,
would.
so. Okay.
If I had a canoe, maybe I would, but I would walk. I think that's what a lot of people do in the village. They walk. You look at over in Shane Place, they're walking, riding the bike or walking their dog or what have you.
Mhm.
I want it to be inviting to the public so that they, you know,
No,
I mean, there's an apartment complex, totally different than what you have here, that's just outside the village. I never walk in there. It doesn't look inviting.
Right.
You know, I want everyone to realize this is a public place, and we put this thing on the water, on the
And
canal
it's
for
interesting.
your
It's
benefit.
interesting.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
guess it's possible you got some of those things already worked in there, but I guess I'd want to see it clearly outlined how these amenities are going to be public.
If you had a friend from out of town, this is a place you'd be proud to drive somebody through and say, look at this.
Well, especially if you're going to go to dinner.
With the trees,
Yeah.
you know,
Walks in there.
all that
That's
sort of thing.
I'm not
And
even.
so that's
I'm walking.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
parking there.
not driving, walking through.
It's that end,
You can stay.
to that end of making it publicly inviting. This came up in my mind the other day. We talked about public parking availability there. One of the problems in the village with the poor restaurants is that people don't go to the restaurants because they can't find parking. And I think you've got to designate public parking around that restaurant.
Yeah, with big-
Yeah, I guess I don't even know if that falls under
Yeah,
our
but-
Yeah, it doesn't.
purview.
No, but
Getting on the-
do that.
But Chris wants the restaurant to be successful. The last thing he wants is a
Empty
unsuccessful
restaurant.
restaurant.
Well, and I want to say that this is our community. You're part of our community. You want it to be successful, not just for the bottom line, but because of of the reputation of what this is. Like, that's what we're doing moving forward at this point. And so, yeah, make it inviting so that we can all be proud of it. That's,
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know what make it inviting means, but.
well, maybe we use some pictures.
Yeah, we can put some pictures.
I mean, we're-
of
Don't
things.
think about it and make it.
If you have inspirational images that you want to share, we're totally open
Yeah, that
to
would be
looking at
helpful.
those. I think we
Yeah.
know what to do, but you probably do too. So if you have inspirational
But
images.
yeah, if there is something that's of interest, you just pass it on.
Yeah,
This is the guy that can pick up the design elements from.
Any other
Yeah.
thoughts on the building, Bill? You're just talking about building 7 still, for you?
Well, I'm a little concerned that you've added cubic feet by taking those apartments that are 13 feet wide and 3 stories high and added more cubic feet on the roof. And I wonder whether you might be wise to look at some alternatives to that 4th floor.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, we didn't intend to add space, but as a consequence of the reshuffling, we added 2.2% to the overall
Right.
cubic volume.
And that was,
We were very proud of the fact that we reduced this volume by 35% down to 1,800,000 and some and change. And we'd sure like to stay at that.
Yeah, we're still very close to that. I can't remember the number, but it's essentially 1.8
pretty
something.
close to that, yeah. Okay.
We added about 40,000. square
Jeff?
foot.
Anything else from anybody?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Wait.
I just want to say one more thing,
My fault.
that's fine. Just, going off of Kendra's comment of making this feel historic, just the details that are within all of these buildings, and that's incredibly important to not just all the villagers, but to this board too, whereas this building right here, just anything you can do to add features or character, or even if you look at Main Street, any main street in town where you go, oh my gosh, this building was built in 1910, look at how did they do the brickwork back then? Just, any sort of small character details, just to be like, this doesn't look like
Yeah.
Goodman on 490.
Well, this is
doesn't
the
look
sort of thing
just-
could come out on the next generation. these drawings, maybe?
Yeah, some detail,
And that's
especially
kind of
on,
what we're talking about
Yeah.
here, but just like details, we were like, wow, that's a historical looking building. That looks like it's been renovated and updated, so.
Yeah. We
A
can't get
historical
there,
canal side building.
Yeah.
Yes.
we can't get there in one step, but
No.
now we can take the next step and maybe a few more steps.
and just on the materials, Dan, you asked about, and I don't know if you had time to pull the R5, but Jeff was right, it is in the R5.
It is.
Yeah.
We have,
Very-
we read it. That doesn't mean you have to use it.
It doesn't, but it very
It means you
specifically
can, it
says-
doesn't mean you have to.
Right, well,
So I mean, we're
I
allowed.
can't do it in wood,
Yeah.
I can't do it in wood. So it specifically discusses cyber cement and brick and stone, and those are the materials that we like to use, so.
You know, and the fiber
So
cement,
it's gonna look good.
right. The fiber
It's
cement is
very
not-
expensive.
It's not really,
What's your opposition to wood?
my opposition to
Wood
wood,
isn't gonna last as
It's
long.
maintenance.
yeah, my opposition to wood is that when they're both painted, I think it's very hard to tell the difference.
And that's what the R5 says. If it looks the same and feels the same, it doesn't matter what it is.
To me, if you get the right brick and the right other materials, then the painted finishes will be the painted finishes and they'll be okay. But we'll work through it.
I can't,
From
I,
a precedential point of view, we have approved this hardy plank and other houses in this village.
I care about the details. The detail work
Right.
matters more to
Sure.
me
Yeah,
than
Right,
that.
if you trim it out right, you know, and you paint the details right,
Because it doesn't look,
Yeah.
it looks.
it's a lot of the times where you see it done, it's not the hardy side that's the problem, it's the details associated with it that give it a bad name, you know, so we'll see.
And if you do the research, the hardy plank is, or product like it, is what are now, is a popular usage in historic preservation.
Were there any other materials you were thinking of though, Dan? Or-
Just materials that we hold our villagers to.
Yeah.
Villagers in the R5.
Yeah, no, but that's just one.
Yeah, there are any.
Yeah.
'Cause
We're on the same team.
Okay,
Yeah,
but, you know, the R5 was designed to accommodate a multifamily project.
Yep.
Not a historic home in the center of the
Well, you
village.
had wood on the table on Monday.
Yeah, accents.
So what was that for? Accents?
That's going to be accents, absolutely,
And I think
because,
if we use it judiciously and
right,
in places where it makes a difference, it can be a good part of the conversation, right? Yeah.
there's no substitute.
I mean, you know what would be
Right.
really great is if you could make the form and structure and all the other parts of the R5 code, make it so that people can't even tell that this is the better product. That serves all of us moving forward.
Yeah.
That happened, please. It just doesn't look like it in these pictures yet. It just looks like it's
And-
new and
and
fake.
what
Don't
you're-
make it look new
Yeah,
and
and
fake.
what you're seeing is so small, there's no detail in there.
Yeah.
But maybe
But
we can
unless
come
we
back, we
see
can
it,
maybe
I
blow
can't
up
approve
some.
that would be good. That would be very helpful, I think, in the next round.
Yeah.
So these guys can look at that and do a side by side.
Yeah,
We're gonna,
I believe it can, I believe in you. It can be done.
so we're gonna,
Detail me out a building that's.
when we
gonna
come
look
back on the
like-
19th, we're gonna try and incorporate some of these ideas.
Great.
I'm very excited about what you did with the view shed in just a few days. So the 19th is going to be fantastic. I am so excited for that
Great.
midterm.
Thank you again for
Okay, thank you.
going to the next stage.
Thanks.
yeah.
I
Okay,
know it wasn't easy.
Are we,
The 12th, so I'm gonna be distracted for a week or so. After
We'll get it
that,
done. We'll get it done.
We'll get it done, we'll figure it out.
We all made it through college.
These were just our notes.
That's-
Yeah.
Fine. I mean, I feel like you have a couple degrees, probably.
we still with your motion here?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, I heard a second somewhere, okay.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
I said it. I second that.
Zoomed out for a second. Okay, Member McBride?
Yes.
Member Evans?
Yes.
Member Olson?
Yes.
Member Lanahan? Yes. Chair Pollak?
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you.
I'm excited.
Thanks for your willingness to work with us.
Thank you.